Today, today is just one of them days, y'all. Hey, sunflowers and squares. Welcome back to BPD Squared, where we discuss mental health from a black woman's perspective. If you guys don't know, my name is Brenda, and let me just say thank you and welcome to this channel. I have so much to say. I don't even know where to begin. Actually, I take that back. I do know where to begin. First, let me say thank you so much to my 108 subscribers. I want to thank you guys for your continued support, even with me being gone for a little while. Thank you for being there, watching the content. I'm so glad that it is helpful and informative to you guys. Thank you for your beautiful comments. And just your feedback in general. I truly appreciate it. I'm so glad that I'm yet another person on the platform who is able to be helpful to others. And that's, pretty much what I'm here for. Now, on to the bus. So today I want to talk to you guys about generational trauma. What exactly is it? Why am I talking about it now? And where do we go from here, as it is obviously still happening in our community, specifically the black community? It's probably going to be a long video, so y'all just buckle in and let's get going. So before I do a deep dive into my personal feelings about this whole subject that we're talking about today, I want to go over with you guys the actual definition of what generational trauma is. So I searched on Google and I got a couple of definitions that I will read off to you guys. One of the definitions comes from courage2connect.com. I will leave a link to this specific article down below in the description. And their definition says generational trauma is an accumulation of neural networks in the brain that are established by patterns in behaviors and hormones. Trauma can be a very difficult thing to heal. The more ingrained it becomes in family systems, the harder the chains are to break. The next definition comes from Wikipedia. Again, I will leave a link to both of these articles down below. This one specifically says transgenerational trauma. It could also be considered intergenerational trauma. But basically the definition is it is a psychological term which asserts that trauma can be transferred in between generations. So quite literally, generational trauma is trauma that is passed from generation to generation. Some examples of intergenerational, transgenerational, or just generational trauma in general are how you may see that a person who has suffered from abuse as a child or throughout their life may use the same techniques and patterns to their children or their relationships going forward in life. And it is a continued cycle. It's pretty much like how you hear some people say, my father did me this way, so I'm going to do my children this way type of thinking. Even growing up poor or growing up in certain neighborhoods around certain people, certain environments, and just certain mindsets is another form of generational trauma, because your parents may have grew up in an environment where they weren't nurtured well by their society, where they weren't nurtured well in their environment. That mindset passes down to the child, and therefore the child grows up with these ideals as well. And if that child is kept within that environment long enough for it to stay ingrained in the mind, that again, it just keeps going down and down and down. But we'll break that down a little bit more in a bit. So in addition to generational trauma, we also have historical trauma. This definition states historical trauma is multi-generational trauma experienced by a specific cultural, racial, or ethnic group. It is related to major events that oppressed a particular group of people because of their status as oppressed, such as slavery, the Holocaust, forced migration, the colonization of Native Americans, so on and so forth. So again, I brought up those points and definitions so that we have a better understanding of what it exactly what exactly it is we are speaking of in this video. Again, generational trauma is trauma that is passed on from generation to generation, from parent to child, from family member to family member. Even historical trauma, which can also be still considered, forgive me, generational trauma, is something that is passed on from a group of people within their own racial or cultural group. These definitions are to help me basically explain that the problems that you see within the communities of people of color are problems that are not new. There are problems that are not just coming up out of the blue. Just because cell phones are about 30 years old doesn't mean that these problems are. We have to take into consideration the images that we are shown now on a constant basis. I can't even say a daily basis. It's pretty much like an hourly basis at this point. The images we are constantly shown of people being slain by police or people being slain in the streets, protesting and standing up for the rights of being, of wanting to just be an equal citizen of this nation, are not images that are new. These are just images that we finally have recorded. So I said earlier how I was going to revisit how this generational trauma, how it's continuously passed down from generation to generation, especially even within the culture, not even just within the family, but within the culture. Let's go back to 1619, around the time slavery began, American slavery at least. During this time between 1619 and 1865, a group of people were taken from their homeland, stripped of their entire identity, and forced into a life of servitude. Because of that, this group of people had to figure out ways to survive. They had to figure out how they were going to make it with little food and all the work. They were worked to death, starved. Some were treated so horribly that I won't even go into detail here. I don't want to trigger anyone more than I probably already have. But the situation in which these people lived in was not a situation that I'm pretty sure nobody wants to deal with. So you think about that and think about how that's 200 years of a mindset of survival. You fast forward to the 1960s when we are starting to see the uprise of people fighting against the injustice of inequality between people just because of their skin tone. You see the civil rights movements and the signing of the rights and the bills and the civil rights movement that put it forth that we no longer have segregation, that black people have the right to just vote and be humans. There's still not equality, but there are still, but it's not to a point where black people are persecuted just because they decided to sit in the same area as someone who was white. Then you fast forward yet again to the 1980s, really, or later 70s, early 80s. You have the crack epidemic where people are forced to take on this life of either selling or using, survive in the best way they know how. They sell to who they know, and they sell to their people because that's how they make their money to make their ends meet in their homes. Because again, they're just trying to survive. Fast forward to 2020, a man can be shot dead in front of his daughter. Another man can be shot and left paralyzed in front of his two daughters. Another man's life is taken in front of our very eyes. We say what we have to say because we're just trying to find solutions so that we can survive. We cannot break a generational curse when the generations are constantly traumatized. Black people are forced to live within the mindset of survival, no matter what decade it is. We have to constantly be on guard. We have to constantly be very wary of how we look, how we move. I mean, black men are being arrested just for sitting in a Starbucks. Black children are being killed just because they were told that because police were told they may have a weapon. Black children are watching their fathers die in front of them. And again, people ask the question, how come we can't get over it? Because it's still happening. If you have a scar on your hand or anywhere on your body, you want that scar to heal. The worst thing to do is to constantly reopen that wound. I feel that the trauma that is being placed upon black people is an open wound that has been constantly stitched back together. With every single recording that we have to witness, each little stitch is being plucked out, and the wound just constantly keeps getting reopened. And therefore, that wound can never heal. And so the generational trauma that black people suffer from is an open wound that is still not yet treated well. For a couple months now, I had it in my mind that I wanted to speak somehow on this, especially when it comes to the lives that have been either ruined or taken from us due to police brutality or other means. I wanted to break down what generational trauma was first to let you guys understand that this is not an isolated thing either. Generational trauma can happen to any and everybody. It's not just a thing that happens to people of color. It's not just a thing that happens to people who have been abused. Generational trauma has very different definitions for every different situation, but is a very real thing that we have to consider. It's a very real thing we have to understand. And I use that as my means to put that point out there that you cannot expect black people to just get over something. You cannot ask a group of people to just accept trauma. You can't ask a group of people to just deal with it. Within my personal community, with people who deal with borderline personality and bipolar disorder and other mental health illnesses in general, I see these posts all the time. How people talk about if you see someone with a broken leg, you automatically feel sympathy for that person because you can see their pain physically. It's there. However, a person with a mental illness, if their mind is broken, it's harder to accept and fathom because you cannot see the pain that the mind is going through. The mask that we have to wear as people with mental health issues is a very strong mask. As people who deal with a mental health issue, think about how you have to navigate every day wearing this mask that you are okay. Now think about how people of color have to wear the same mask as well as wear the mask of not being affected by the things that are oppressing them just because of their skin color. As black people, we have to be okay with being oppressed. We have to be okay with being dismissed. We have to be okay with being killed and watching one of our own being killed. Every day we have to be okay with all the injustice and we're still expected to live a normal life. The last point I'm going to put on this, I don't know if a lot of my audience has ever seen 12 Years a Slave. If you do not have a strong stomach, do not watch this film. If you've never seen it before, don't watch it. And spoiler alert. But I have to bring up this point. And this is just another thing that adds to the point of generational trauma. There is a scene in 12 Years a Slave where the main character is hung. And the uncomfortable part about it is not the fact that he was hung. It was the abnormal amount of time that the camera stayed in this one scene, watching this man balance between life and death on his tippy toes. And in the background, all the other slaves on the plantation continue about their work as normal. And it is a painful scene to watch because as a Black person, you not only feel for that, but you understand exactly why they had to continue on as if nothing happened. Just like that scene in that film, we're shown these images every single day. And yet we are expected to just carry on like nothing happened. Again, this is a mindset that has been ingrained and passed down to us. 400 years of generational conditioning, generational trauma. It was not that long ago, y'all, that our people that look like me, were in a position of being put into the worst possible situations, all for agriculture. So the main question I'm sure everybody wants the answer to. So where do we go from here? What is the solution then? We've identified what generational trauma is. We understand how it has been affecting and how it can affect generations and how it affects cultures and societies in general. So now that we understand what it is and we know what it looks like, what do we do to prevent it? That's a very good question, y'all. I've really been racking that question in my brain. I've been really trying to come up with the answer to that. Because I know for sure, like, especially with Black people, it's like, especially in the past, like during segregation, we're sitting there protesting, okay, well, if we peacefully protest, march in the streets, you know, we're able to say what we need to say, but we're not causing any trouble. Well, we'd still get beaten with batons and sprayed down with hoses. Okay. So if we don't do anything, we comply, we keep our hands still, we don't move, we tell the officer exactly what we're going to do as we're doing it, we still get shot dead. Okay, well, we go back to trying to peacefully protest. Well, we get tear gassed and shot with rubber bullets. So we try to riot and people are still dying and other things are happening. So it's like, what do you expect us to do now? A lot of the people that also dealt with this trauma in the beginning, a lot of them are still alive right now. Let's not forget, my dad is only 60 years old, y'all. My grandparents are still alive. They're in their 80s. These people lived through this. My grandparents were born in the 30s. Their parents were born in the 1910s. This is not something that happened so many years ago. People that went through this are still alive today. If you just ask someone, they can tell you what life was like for them or in general. So these are not things that happened so long ago that it's hard to understand how we as Black people, even now, I'm 31, people even my age are still traumatized by this. But anyway, I don't want to go on too much longer. I want to say thank you to everyone for watching this video. Thank you again to my 108 subscribers. I truly appreciate all the support and the love from you guys. Make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe. Make sure you check out both my Instagram pages. Of course, check me out on BPDsquared. That is my normal Instagram. I just post pretty much what's on my mind at the time on that. But also check out my new Instagram account. It's called Sunny and Square. That is where I do my digital art. Basically, I'm trying to express myself through digital creations. I have an Etsy store, so if you guys want to support me, definitely go follow Sunny and Square and check out my Etsy store. There will be products on my store very soon, physical products on my store very soon, but please make sure you go and check it out and show your girl some love, even more than you already are. But yeah, guys, again, I hope that this video was informative to you. I hope that there's a better understanding of what generational trauma is, as well as how it is affecting not just the Black community, but all of us as a people in general, whether you're white, Black, Asian, whatever, Hispanic, Native American, doesn't matter. It affects us all. So yeah, as always, stay square, my sunflowers. It's been so long since I've said that. I love you guys so, so, so much. And I will definitely see you guys very soon. Bye.